from the bottom of my heart, and I'm sure many in Israel will join me in the wishes that your nation and our nation one day will form good relations that will benefit all of us.
Yeah, thank you. And let me introduce to my viewers, Professor Yossi Shain is a very famous scholar, a professor in Israel, and he is the person who assisted the foreign minister of Israel as well. So I guess this uh, Israel UAE deal was just announced yesterday. It was a long effort and had your contribution as well.
I wouldn't claim any fame on this, so I don't want to make any claims that I have contributed to anything. But if you give me any credit, it's on your. You take responsibility for that.
Here, Professor Yossi, I would love to know a little about you. Please share a little background introduction.
Okay. I was born and raised in Israel, and I'm a scholar of international relations and politics. I'm the head of the School of Political Science, Government and International Affairs at Tel Aviv University, which is, as you very well know, Israel's main city alongside our capital, Jerusalem. I have shared in the last 20 years a joint position at Tel Aviv University and also as a professor at Georgetown University in Washington. I did my Ph.D. at Yale University in the United States, and I'm writing books on many issues, including my reputation in publishing my books is especially on the issue of diaspora politics and international affairs, including Pakistanis and including, of course, all your region and many. And I've dealt with transitions to democracy. I've written recently a book which will come out in 6 or 7 months in English, which called The Israeli Century and the Israelization of Judaism, asking the question, what happened to the Jews, to my people, when sovereignty informed their life after 2,000 years of diaspora life? And that is a very important subject because it relates to what we're going to discuss today about the sovereignty of Israel and the strengthening of the Israeli state vis-a-vis all other Jewish people around the world as the central focal point of Jewish life.
Thank you, Professor. And I would like to know how do you feel after having this United Arab Emirates?
I think every Israeli, and I think the vast majority of them, are delighted to know whenever there is a new state, an important state, entering the cycle or the circle of states that have peace with Israel. As you very well know, Israel was always a pariah in the region and as a pariah among Muslim states. Israel was seen as an enemy, as a nemesis for the Arab states during the time of Arab nationalism until they signed a peace deal for the first time with Egypt after many years of rivalry. This was in the late 70s, early 80s. Eventually, Israel signed a peace deal with Jordan and has also very, I would say, important relations with other Arabs, but it was always underneath. The Muslim world also became hostile to Israel because of the issue of the Palestinians, but also because of extremism and the idea that Israel and its existence, its mere existence, is somewhat threatening the Muslims and the Arabs, which I think is a misrepresentation of our life here. And I don't want to go into history or into rivalry. I just would like to say that we are people who are seeking peace, loving peace, hoping that our Arab neighbors and Muslim friends will live side by side with us and will lead to the prosperity of our region, our country, and the entire world. I think it's time to put all the other heightened rhetoric against Israel down. People to have to understand this is a state which grew very rapidly with great success. We began this state, as you know, after the Holocaust, where the Jews were perished in the hands of the Nazis, and we managed to build a beautiful state. We're almost 10 million by now. We started with 600,000, and we were always wishing to enlarge the circle of friends. And I think we are also a very prosperous state. We have a very illustrious high-tech industry. We are seeking, and we are in academia seeking friends all over the world, and we have friends from China to the United States, all over in your region as well. And I think if we could have the Pakistani people with their tremendous capacities and potential for a relation with us, this will be a wonderful day to celebrate, which I'm sure all of us will hoist the flags of the two countries and will be happy.
I wish for the peaceful future of both of our countries, and I am a strong advocate of having diplomatic ties with each and every country on the planet Earth, because I strongly believe that anything can be resolved when you sit on a table and talk to one another.
I think that. Sorry.
Yeah, please.
No. I think for too long, lots of things were said and done, and I think lots of misrepresentation. And I think what happened in our region in particular with the Arab Spring, which went so sour, so much mayhem in our region. I think that we have to, and we have rivalry, very strong rivalry with Iran, who is committed to destroy us, but we, of course, are not going anywhere. And I think it's time to put all this heightened rhetoric of extremism vis-a-vis the Israeli state. And there's so much potential of building good life for everybody rather than harboring animosity. And many people in Israel are yearning for that.
But I remember that there was a period when you had very good relations with Iran, I guess.
There were periods, of course, during the 50s and 60s when Israel was a very young country. At that time, of course, there were different relations with the Persian Shah. Israel was a very small country at the time. Remember, in the early 50s, we had barely 1.2 million people, most of whom came as new immigrants from remnants of the Jewry in Europe and those who escaped the Arab lands as a result of attacks following the creation of the State of Israel. And we were trying to get any friends we can. The Iranian state at the time was open to business with Israel. So there were some Israeli companies that were working. And this was also in relation to the Americans. Many people think that we were always allies only of the Americans, but keep in mind that even the Americans never thought that Israel will survive in the 50s maybe, and they had much more in common with what they call the Baghdad Pact, which was of Arab states, etc. in the region. But certainly we had some relations. When Khomeini came to power in 79, of course, all this came to an end. Khomeini charged that his struggle for Islamic unity or for Islamic revolution put Israel as what he called the small Satan. America was the big Satan. And as a result of that, there were also, this was enlarged to the Middle East, with the Iranian becoming much more involved in Lebanon with the Shiite leadership, which became so hostile to us. And we, of course, fought, and still, in this region, because there's so much lack of stability. You see what happened in Syria with the mayhem, almost of a million people, or maybe less, 900,000 perished, and many more in the struggle between Shia and Sunnis. So we were kind of caught in between sometimes. And after the decline or the demise of the Islamic State, so we are trying kind of like to navigate our ship in this uncharted waters sometimes. We also have an outstanding issues with our neighbor, the Palestinians, even though we made tremendous inroads. Israel is a country, as I said, of 10 million, among whom 2 million and more are Arab Israelis, Palestinians in origin, who are citizens of the state, serving in the Israeli parliament and studying in universities. I'll give you just the number you will know. For example, Haifa University has 40% Arab students. At Tel Aviv University, it's almost 20% Arab students. During the coronavirus, we had 20% of the doctors and nurses in Israeli hospitals are Arabs. So there's much room to work with, and people are seeing the possibilities. If only we can cut the enmity and start to build bridges and see that there is a room here for people to live side by side and not trying to somewhat ignore the other's life and see them as illegitimate, as Israel has been seen by many, regretfully, in the Shiite world, of course, and of course, among other Muslim countries. So I think anytime we open up with a new Arab country and renewing relations or building relations, this has been a huge cause for celebration, and people are eager for larger things. We, of course, kept our stability and security, which is our paramount issue, to flourish and build, and we understand the vagaries of power. So that's where we are.
Yeah, Professor Yossi, I just want to ask you, maybe you feel it a harsh question, but the picture appears in front of us. The Israeli land is spreading and the Palestinian land is shrinking. And I guess now Google has just the word Palestine is disappeared on Google Map as well.
I'll tell you what happened here.
What is this all?
I don't know what's Google Map. I don't know. For many years, throughout the Arab world and the Muslim world, the word Israel has not been mentioned. And in every map, the name Israel was erased, in fact. I don't know if it's now different with Palestinians. From the time of when you were established in 1947, this was the year when Israel was recognized as the Jewish state by the United Nations Resolution 101. This resolution 101 stated that there will be two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state. As a result of this decision, which was made in 1947, the Arab state attacked the new entity of Israel. And after the war of what we call the 1948 war, known as the War of Independence, Israel managed to consolidate itself. This was the issue of the 1948 boundaries. The Arab states never accepted Israel. Of course, Palestine, there was no Palestinian entity. There were Jordanians, there were Egyptians, there were Syrians. And then the Arab tried again in 1967. In 1967, we came ahead, of course, in the Six-Day War, and we conquered more land in the West Bank and in Gaza and in the Golan Heights. The Palestinians again rejected the very idea of living side by side with us. I think the Palestinians have learned, and this is a terrible lesson, that whenever they're rejected or attacked or delegitimize us, eventually we prevailed because we have no other option. This is our life and we're going to defend it. Now the Palestinians are certainly seeing again, and they condemn again, these new relations because they think that they can achieve something if they will remain in a position not to negotiate. Even during the Obama years and during the present Trump, they refused to join the negotiations. In the meantime, there were voices in Israel to annex the West Bank, known as Judea and Samaria in Israel, and now they did not annex. And the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, say, if you sign a deal with us and you do not annex, you will have a deal of peace with us. So the Prime Minister of Israel said, okay, we are not annexing, let's have a peace deal. So Israel, one has to remember, gave territory to the Egyptians when they signed a deal with Egypt in 1978, the Camp David Accords all the way. Israel gave the entire Sinai Desert, which was 3 times the size of the state of Israel, which is only the state itself, 20,000 square kilometers, excuse me. So it's always the question of reverse causality: who started, who is not, and Palestinians are living side by side with us, and I hope they will have the leadership and the courage to say, okay, let's have a deal. We want to live with peace with you, and that's where we are. Otherwise, their lot will linger. And as you can see, Arab states are not ready to shoulder the Palestinians anymore to enter the good relation in the Middle East, because I understand that the Middle East has much more to give and greater danger with the Iranians, with nuclear weapons, and they understand that they can have alliance with Israel, both strategic alliance, economic alliance, and of course play a much better role in the global affairs.
So, Professor, I am getting an impression if every Muslim country which doesn't recognize Israel yet, like Pakistan is there, if we start peace deals with Israel, Israel will give more relaxation to Palestinians.
I don't want to make any claims on behalf of Israel. Once I'll be the prime minister, I'll do so, and I don't think there is a chance I'll be, so I will refrain from making concessions on the part of Israelis. But one thing I will tell you, whenever the Israelis feel that there is a security and there is hope and there is no enmity, Israelis are incredibly generous in the way they treat their neighbors and in the way they treat those who love them. As I always say, once you show Israel the affection and the readiness and the friendship, we always extended our hand. I think it's a big mistake on the part of the Palestinians, let alone on the part of a Hamas organization. They think that Israel should not exist, that attack Israel as we speak today. Many attacks come today from the southern part of Israel, burning our fields and so on a day-to-day level, claiming that Israel has no right to exist. They call it the Zionist entity. Israel, of course, will defend itself. Luckily, we have established a very strong army. Luckily, we are completely committed to this nation state, as I said. Luckily, we have very good relations with the United States and many other nations that understand the gravity of our existence, that understand the benefit of having a democratic state in the middle of the Middle East that is flourishing and is doing well economically and otherwise, and is not seeking extremism. And I think that if Pakistan will extend its hand in any fashion, discussion will ensue, and people will see suddenly the light in the end of this tunnel, which is too long. And I think possibilities are there. I don't have to tell you, we have relations with your neighbor, India. This is, of course, maybe a touchy business for you between India and Pakistan. But we have very warm relations now with India, with China, with Japan, with all over Asia. There is no reason whatsoever that we will not have warm relations with your country and any other country in the world that is ready to negotiate with us. We are always open for that.
As people always joke about Pakistan, that we are Israel of China. So
got you.
They refer it your relation with USA, and they talk in that context. So I'm a optimist person, and I see a brighter future for the global village citizens, because nowadays it doesn't matter that you are living in Israel or I am living in Pakistan. We are so well connected. We impact one another's life. We impact one another's economy. We impact one another's growth. We can help one another in different means. And of course, I always admire the beautiful minds of Israel, their scientists, their researchers, their technicians, their the innovations which Israel is doing day by day. And I am an admirer of that all beauties of your country. And no matter what any country officially thinks, but your country exists. It is on the map. It is a part of UN. And
absolutely,
this is just time of realization, and this is time of I guess this is just a matter of time now, and everyone has to deal with one another in the global village in a respectful way. I guess we are going in that direction. The whole humanity is going in that direction.
We absolutely hope so.
Give me a news, Professor. what next? Which country is next?
I think people are talking in the region and understanding that there are potentials here. People are now talking about more relations in the Gulf, maybe Qatar. The dream is of having a deal with Saudi Arabia, a major state in our region. And I think once Saudis and the Qataris and others are joining in this relations, the entire Middle East will change for the better.
Yeah. And I guess the pilot phase of Saudi Arabia will be Bahrain.
If I may, we are the three monotheistic religion from the time of Moses, to the time, Jesus and Muhammad, and these are the three major civilizations that exist. One should not nullify the other, and one should start to understand that the interreligious dialogue, a serious one, should take place. The idea of the Jewish people as a very ancient people who began their journey as early as the 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, as early as civilization can be remembered, having sovereignty already at the time of King David and Solomon, and surviving all the odds in the world that you can imagine, and their house destroyed. They have been dispersed all over the world. They always kept the flame of coming back to their land, to the Holy Land, to this place that we are all cherishing and always say next year in Jerusalem. The Arabs and the Muslim also have their yearnings. They have their yearnings, they have their beliefs. We respect that. If this will begin also a good dialogue and people understand that religion should not be the harbinger of conflict and enmity and extremism and terrorism, but rather a point of dialogue for the existence of these three civilizations that inform monotheistic life in our time and ever since the Jews have sort of like came on the fore, because we were, it's not an argument, we were the first sort of like nation that adopted the monotheistic belief and became the sons and daughters of our Almighty in that respect. This should be a sign that something is happening. Politicians can do the job. They should change their rhetoric. They should change the language of discrediting the other, of discrediting the anti-Semitic, whatever it is. We don't want to ask what happened in the past. We want to move forward, and we are doing it out of strength. We decided no more weakness. The Jews, without a state, were people without any protection. We are eager to have peace, but we are completely determined to defend ourselves, our way of life, and our tribal life, just as the Pakistanis are, the Indians are, and others. So we have a strong sense of self-determination. We want to talk to our Palestinian neighbors and get them to feel the same. But this requires, first and foremost, understand that this Jewish state is not going anywhere. And once you understand that and understand the potential that it has, I think you change the picture. And anyone who comes to visit here understand.
Unfortunately, I cannot visit because still my passport is not. It is written on my passport that I cannot visit Israel.
And I cannot visit your country, but maybe we will
I guess,
be.
Maybe I guess that is not the case. I guess that is not the case.
I cannot.
Okay.
I cannot visit Pakistan.
Don't you have any other passport?
No, I have only Israeli passport. Notwithstanding the fact that I reside in the United States, but I'm also a green card holder. As I said, I'm a professor in the United States, but I don't have dual citizenship. I have only Israeli citizenship.
Okay. And what is the nature of conflict between Israel and Iran? I personally couldn't understand Iran and Israel conflict on the basis of Palestine. That is somehow not making any sense to me.
I think that, and I don't want to give here a long speech about Iranian relations. Iran, since it became the Islamic Republic, consolidating itself in the 1990s after the war with Iraq, built on the enmity to two rivals, which it saw both theologically and I would say geopolitically. Iran has an ambition to become an empire on a region. It wanted to accentuate the idea that it will lead the Islamic world, and it will lead it against what they consider to be the blasphemous United States and what they consider us to be as a foreign seed in this region. And they also wanted to build their legitimacy by saying we support the Palestinian life, and also by supporting Hezbollah and other Shiite extremists in the region who are fighting against Israel. Therefore, they are supplying weapons all the time. They are involved in the war in Syria. They've got into lots, and they're trying to build nuclear weapons, declaring that they will wipe us out. They always said they will wipe us out. We understand when people are threatening us, and we are not going to sit on the side and allow this to happen. So we act. Why the radicalization of the Islamic Republic is happening, you know very well. There is also a war in the region between the Sunnis and the Iranians. We are not the only nemesis for Tehran. Interesting enough, the new peace that is being signed with United Arab Emirates and the good relations that we are having with other Arab states is particularly because they see the danger of the Iranian aggression in the region, the support of terrorism in the region, the support of Hezbollah, which has nothing to do with us. Why Hezbollah is fighting us? Because Hezbollah destroys Lebanon, completely destroyed the state, building a state within a state. Look what happened in Lebanon, the poor Lebanese this week. This is a terrible, and there is no reason whatsoever, but it relates to other rivalries. We have nothing to do with them. Between Christians and Muslims, look at the Christians, we're all wiped out from our region. The only flourishing Christian community remains in Israel. And the Shiite and Hezbollah, which is vowing to destroy Israel, is also, like creating its own state with its own army in Lebanon. So this kind of instability, which many countries in the region are completely against and are fighting against Hezbollah now, suddenly find that they have an alliance with Israel rather than enmity, and they want to basically strengthen this bond built on economic relations. As you suggested, we are incredibly successful in artificial intelligence, in cyber technology, in everything which is related to high tech. We're second to none on NASDAQ in terms of big companies. All the big companies, Google and Intel and Microsoft and Amazon, coming to Israel because they understand the powerhouse that we have in terms of technology. The GDP per capita of Israel is $40,000. We have men and women who are seeking innovation, seeking globalization. They better get with the program rather than enmity and I would say ancient hatreds.
Yeah, and just to second your words, Israel is, I really admire the agricultural growth in Israel. Without
Absolutely.
water, they are doing miracles. Without water, they are doing miracles.
We have lots
And
of
that-
water. We have lots. You know why? We are the country that desalinate more water. We came to this place, there was no water whatsoever. When I grew up, we had to conserve water all the time. So what we did, we learned how to desalinate water, and now we're selling water to others. This is what Israel is all about. We recreate ourselves. We develop technologies. We're trying not to say how we cannot, but how we can. And the fact that we do how we can is constantly moving forward. So Israelis are incredibly in innovation. We have free thinking in this country. We have a democracy. We have a free democracy. We can absolutely demonstrate. You see demonstrations in this country against Netanyahu, who is now has like all kind of charges. There is an open society, open media. We are an open society, and we don't gonna give it up. So we have both a Jewish state, an open democratic Jewish state, with a desire to have good relations with all our neighbors, and in particular our Islamic brothers and sisters all over the world, if they accept it and understand that it is out of mutual respect.
Yeah, that makes a sense. That makes a sense and perfect sense to me. What do you see the potential of relations with Pakistan?
I think that Pakistan is a Sunni state, a state that went through lots, that also has its challenges. It's a huge state. By now, I guess you're over 200 million or something close to it.
220 million.
220 million. I think we have dealt with population, as you say, with agriculture. Keep in mind, when we came to this land, it was a barren land. People came to the desert, and the desert bloomed. So we kind of like know how to kind of like create ex nihilo almost things. I think Pakistanis, if they were open, many Pakistanis I met in the United States and other places in the diaspora were flourished and grew and understand, and so Israelis. You have your tradition, you have your pride, you have your nationality. I don't see any reason why there cannot be good relations on all accounts if you tame the extremism and see in us a potential ally and a friend. You speak to the United States, you come to Washington, you see there is, of course, the Jewish diaspora, the Pakistani diaspora. There are lots of avenues to discuss matters. And I, for myself, can tell you, if the Pakistanis will host me, I will go on the first airplane after the coronavirus, and we'll come to you and we'll shake your hand and we'll say ahlan wa sahlan, and we'll cut bread with you, and we'll say, let's start to talk. And I think this will be a great day for all of us, because the potential is immense.
Professor, let me tell you one thing. I don't know about the technical details of traveling to Israel and traveling an Israeli, if an Israeli is traveling to Pakistan. I don't know the technical details about it. But let me assure you, I will be the first person to host you, to offer you my place, to welcome you here on my land. And you will see that people are ready to talk, people are ready to understand, people are ready. Today, I'm again thankful that on such a short notice of few minutes, you gave us time to join the session. But still today, we wanted to see this whole deal, the Israel-UAE deal, through an Israeli eye. That's why we
Yes.
requested you to join us and let us know how you feel, how you think about the future, how important this deal is for you. So this is how we Pakistanis are. We
First
have,
of all, I'm sure that there is a tremendous desire among people to see what I describe. I have no second thoughts about the desire of Pakistanis who also have known difficulties and mayhem and war, etc., to see good life. I think you need courageous leadership. You think you need stable societies. I think you need the what I call rational voices, not extreme voices. We also have in our midst extreme voices. They have to be tamed. They always have to be tamed. We don't come to this as naive. We don't come to this as kind of like cosmopolitan without understanding the past. We understand the lots of wounds, and this has to be healed. But we come out of strength. You have a strong country. We have a strong country. We have a strong commitment and patriotic commitment to our nation and to our people. This is a good base for starting to talk. And if we can talk and see mutual benefits, bilateral relations, put others in the equation. You have in your region rivalry with India and others. Sometimes neighbors don't have good relations. We are
yeah,
not precluding anyone from having good relations with us. On the contrary, we are eager, as long as there is kind of like people are taking their arms down and saying, let's talk in a peaceful manner. We have no qualms with anyone, no claims against anyone.
yeah, that's right. I totally agree with you. And I guess it is time at least to initiate the people to people diplomacy, or we use a term Sufi diplomacy.
Sufi
As
diplomacy.
yeah, as I know, there is a rich Sufi culture in Israel.
Absolutely.
As you know that there is a rich Sufi culture in Pakistan. We
Yes.
share so much Sufi traditions. We have a Sufi heritage in both countries. We have Sufi leaderships in both countries, and there are Sufis who are ready to start at least on the least minimum level of a public diplomacy channel. I
I will
wish and I
be,
pray that it start working and it take place as soon as it's possible.
I'm the head of the School of Diplomacy at Tel Aviv University, and I also am the head of the Institute for what we call the Brody Institute for Diplomacy, and I will give all that I can have, all that in my disposal as an academic, the podium and the resource that we have. These are not great resources, but nevertheless, for intellectual discussion, for discovery from people who have interest in talking and reading and seeing. So I think this can be a very good initiative. If we can roll the dice and start to see, you can find in me, and I'm sure in many others here, good friends. And just as you will be happy to host me, I can tell you we will extend our hospitality to you and to all
Thank you.
your countrymen. And again, I'm wishing you, all your countrymen, happy Independence Day.
Thank you.
May you blessed and flourish. And just one thing, think about us as people like you who are eager to have good life and cherish and believe in our God and believe in our nation. And once this begins like that, lots of miracles can happen, because this shouldn't be a miracle, this should be normality.
Sure, sure. And I am really thankful, Professor, for your time. I know that you have to travel in few minutes, and
Yes.
you were on traveling, and you still have to go somewhere. I am really thankful for your time, and my best regards to you. Best
Best
wishes
regards
to you.
to you. I hope this is only the beginning, and
Yeah.
enjoy your holiday.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks a
All,
lot.
all the best to you.
All the best.
Bye.